Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to annotate an AP Research academic paper from 2023. This is a high scoring sample, and when we're annotating this paper, we're going to focus on the anatomy of the research paper. Meaning, we're not going to go into details about the rubric and about the score and so on. However, we're going to focus on the main parts of the research paper that have to be there in all research papers. This will help you read other research papers and annotate them easily. So let's start with an overview of the expectations of the academic paper. What should the academic paper look like? So first of all, it says, generate a focused research question. A focused research question that is situated within or connected to a larger scholarly context or community. What does this mean? It means that the research question that I'm going to generate, which is also a derivative of the topic itself, has to be connected one way or another to the published articles or to the published works and about the same topic that I'm discussing. So, for example, if I'm gonna look at COVID, let's say, COVID, the effect of COVID on education, let's say. So there are already published articles and published journals about the effect of COVID on education, whether it is the perception of students or the perception of teachers or even the perception of parents, the hardships, maybe confidence. So all of these deal with COVID and its effect on education. However, they are derived into many subtopics. Okay, so we have to know that there is already an established we call it established scholarly context, meaning there is already, and this is by the way for all topics in the world, okay, there is something that has been already discussed about those topics. However, they may be like certain aspects of this topic. Okay, now, should I write about something that has already been written about? No, you should not take something or a research paper that has let's say established a connection between COVID, let's say, and let's say for example autism. Okay, and you do the same exact research paper. No, you can, for example, have autism and or the effect of COVID on autistic students, for example. So it is an aspect that has not been discussed before. And even if there is a research paper that has been published about COVID and the effect of COVID on autistic students, maybe in the US, you can have the same topic and the same research done in Kuwait. So in this case, you are going to kind of talk about something that is new. It has not been discussed in the scholarly conversation. Okay, we're gonna go into details about this later on. And then it says, explore relationships between and among multiple works. And this is something that we have already done in AP seminar, meaning we're going to look at how perspectives talk to each other within the scholarly literature related to the topic of inquiry. Of course, it is about the same topic that we are discussing. So in other words, it is when scholarly works or perspectives talk to one another. Articulate what approach, method, or process that they have chosen to use to address their research question, and why they have chosen that approach to answering the research question and how they employ it. Now, this is something new. And this is what actually makes AP research, which is the big R research, which is that in AP seminar, you used to conduct a research, but the research that you have, the research paper actually that you have written, mainly investigates the other research papers that have been published, okay? Or the other articles or whatever the sources say, which is called the secondary research, because you're not the one who's coming up with the data. Now, in AP research, you have to find an approach, a method, or a process. We're going to go again into details about those when we come back to class. But there is a method, there is something that is used by the student in order to generate data, okay? So why do I need to generate data? Because I need to address the research question, okay? Which is, I've already explained what the research question is, because it's something new, right? You have to contribute to the field of knowledge. Okay, and you have to explain why you have chosen that approach to answering the question and how they employ it. They here refers to the students, of course. Develop and present their own argument. So there is an argument, conclusion, or new understanding, while acknowledging its limitations and implications. So this is also something that we have done in AP seminar, which is developing and presenting the main argument, or the conclusion, and the new understanding. Well, actually in AP seminar, there is no new understanding, because the new understanding here is something that I create. Maybe a new understanding in AP seminar can be more of a resolution or a conclusion, but it is not necessarily new, because it may be found in the field. However, in AP research, you have to come with a new understanding, with something new that has not been discussed before you. And then you have to also comment on the limitations of the new understanding and the implications, and this is also was done in AP seminar. Support their conclusion through compilation, use, and synthesis of relevant and significant evidence generated by the research. And this is clear. The evidence here should not only be from other scholarly papers, but your own self-generated, student-generated evidence, which is the data that you find after employing maybe a survey or a questionnaire or maybe an analysis or anything else. Use organization and design elements to effectively convey the paper's message. This has to do with organization and design, and these have to be related to the style of the paper, okay? Which is the MLA, APA, and so on. Consistently and accurately cite, attribute, and integrate knowledge and works of others. This is also, while distinguishing between the student's voice and that of others, this was also employed in AP seminar, where we had to cite everything in order to avoid plagiarism, and we had to have our own student's voice through commentary and reasoning. And then, last but not least, generate a paper in which word choice and syntax enhance communication. And this is important, because you have to always keep in mind that this is an academic research paper. So you have to respect the audience of this research paper. Your word choice have to be up to that level, okay? And the syntax should effectively enhance the communication and prove the point by, of course, also adhering to established conventions of grammar, usage, and mechanics. And those are the basics, right? Now let's delve deeper into the paper itself. Let's start with the title, Learning Through Cultural Barriers. And as you can see, we have a long title, as you can see, but this is not about the length. It is about how comprehensive the title is, how many variables does it overlap, okay? So for example, learning through cultural barriers, the impact, okay, and you have to focus on what does this research tend to do. So it says the impact of Hispanic immigrant parenting. So it is about parenting, but what kind of parenting? The Hispanic immigrant parenting on what So it is the effect of X on Y, right? So on their first generation adolescents. Okay, so this is Y. But is it only the adolescents in general? No, it is their academic performance, okay? And it says the first generation, so their direct siblings, okay? Their sons and daughters. Is that it? No. And then it says, and its cultural correlation to the imposter syndrome epidemic. And as we can see, this shows that the paper is also going to see a correlational study, okay? Okay, so let's start. Let's focus on the word count here, which is 5,448. Okay, we start with an abstract. Usually the abstract is the summary of the paper, okay? We're not gonna look at it for now, just like readers do not look at abstracts in the papers, okay? But I do recommend that you read it. Introduction. According to the Center of Migration Studies, 2022, roughly whatever Hispanic immigrants lived in the United States in 2019, which directly correlates to the rising levels of Hispanic first-generation children being born in the United States each year. So as we can see here from the very introductory sentence, we are being led to to exploring the main topic of the paper, right? Which is about migration, Hispanic immigrants, and the focus is the United States. Again, we have to focus on the point that this research paper is published in 2022, which makes it recent. Okay. Again, we're not going to comment again on credibility of the sources and the currency of the source. Now, the unique relationship between immigrant parents and their first-generation children consists of dealing with various challenges such as cultural assimilation, financial limitations, and educational readiness, which create unusual barriers compared to the children of non-Hispanic white peers. The parental approach on how each of these complex issues are targeted encompasses the kind of parenting style that each Hispanic immigrant parent adopts, and parenting style has its specific effects on the first generation children's emotional, physical, and behavioral state. So as you can see here, this is the student's voice, okay, because this is not cited anywhere. So this is the unique student's voice. Now, what is the student trying to do here? He's trying to build background information. Let's skip. As you can see, he quotes, he paraphrases, and he explains what a parenting style is. He uses visualization of data, meaning figures and so on, to explain what he is discussing. And then, as you can see, it says gap in the available research. Now, you have to know that in AP research, you are expected to find a gap. What is a gap? A gap is something that has not been discussed in the field before, okay? It can be something about the population, which is called a population gap, meaning if there is a research paper that has been that was exploring, let's say, North Americans, okay, and their perception regarding fast food, okay? A gap may be the same research topic, but exploring the perception of Kuwaitis on fast food. So this is a gap. Of course, a gap can also be something a knowledge gap, meaning something that has not been discussed before. Meaning, for example, if there is a cure to cancer, let's say, and this cure is new, a research paper can establish that new method or that new treatment in a research paper, and in this way, the research would be filling a gap in knowledge. Now, in order to situate, to find out the gap, I have to situate my gap within the research field. Meaning, if this is, let's say, I would always recommend that you look at it just like a puzzle. So let's say, sorry for that. So let's say if this is a piece of puzzle, for example, fine, and this is a piece of puzzle that belongs to a bigger place. So this, the missing piece of puzzle here, is the gap, okay? The other parts here that are full, okay, are the pieces of knowledge or the research papers that have already been established. So this is my gap, and the whole picture, the rest of the picture, is going to be the scholarly works that are published, right? Okay, so, or the previous papers that have been published. So first of all, I would have to situate the gap within the body of knowledge. This is the body of knowledge, okay? So how do I do that? I start by explaining what other research papers have found, and then I say how this gap is really a gap. So for example, it says, the previous studies on parenting styles and its effect on adolescents' academic performance have been studied extensively. Okay, good. So parenting styles and academic performance of students have been already studied. So what is new? The majority of these peer-reviewed journals have all linked the authoritative style to positive adjustment levels in adolescents, and so on. And as you can see from those, it means that all of those research papers have established that. However, and this is a key word over here, however, studies have reported that the negative and positive effects on adolescents vary when analyzing different cultures, such as doctors quaffed from the University of whatever. So it says, the studies, however, what have they found? That these results are going to change with the change of what? With the change of cultures, okay? Meaning that if I did the same study, this was done in Hispanic, I think, cultures. If this was done in Kuwait, the results are going to change as well. So this is a part of the gap. Keeping this in mind, the previously established parameters that make up the unique relationship between HIP and their first generation children have not been studied. As you can see, in terms of at all, have they not been studied at all? No. In terms of the effects of parenting styles have on their academic performance. Okay, so this is again, it shows how extensive this gap is. Therefore, this study can provide information on whether or not the impact of parenting style on their adolescents' education differs from the typical Western research findings when applying the same research methods, as you can see. So I should not create a research method. No, I should apply a research method that has already been used in another research paper, but I may change the population, just like this student did. Okay, the connection, this study has to imposter syndrome originates from California State University, whatever. As you remember, when we were reading the title, we said that the student also shows a correlation between or tries to explain a correlation. Correlation means a relationship between two variables. So for example, when one increases, the other increases. When one increases, the other decreases, and so on. So there is a relationship between X and Y. So as you remember, she said that we're going to see a correlation between this research and imposter syndrome. Okay. Yeah. Okay, sorry. So next she goes to the research question. Okay, and the research question says, as you can see, she did not say, my research question is. No, she started, in order to examine the correlation between HIP, first generation adolescents, academic performance, and imposter syndrome, the following research question will be the driving force behind the project. What are the effects of the parenting style that Hispanic immigrant parents adopt on their first generation adolescents' academic performance, and how, as you can see, and how does this correlate to the prevalence of imposter syndrome cases reported amongst whatever. So as you can see, the research question is detailed, but at the same time it is complex. So she started with operational definitions, meaning what is the meaning of first generation students and imposter syndrome. First generation is, of course, for example, if I am a parent, my son is going to be the first generation. Let's say I'm a Pakistani, so my first generation immigrant is my son in this case, okay? Imposter syndrome says is not a medical diagnosis. It is simply a name for a psychological phenomenon in which one belittles his or her skills or accomplishments and also may feel like a fraud despite experiencing external or material success. Meaning, for example, I live in the US, okay, or not necessarily in the US. Now, I live in Kuwait, I study in Kuwait, and then when I meet, let's say, an American, I would always feel that he studies or his, let's say, knowledge is better than mine. No matter how much maybe I score in map tests or in international exams, I would always feel that I am a fraud. I am not as good as that person, okay? Now, next we move to something called the literature review. The literature review is when I study the published works regarding my topic, and I place them together and I place them in conversation, okay? So now the literature review in this paper is organized according to perspectives. So for example, this is perspective number 1, and as you can see in the literature review, I have to check that there are multiple perspectives. These multiple perspectives are put in conversation with one another, and of course everything have to be cited, okay, just like those, okay? So we're not gonna go into them, okay, but it explains the topic in details. And then as you can see, this is the other perspective, again more yes, and then this is the third one, fourth, fifth. Okay, so as you can see here from the literature review, if we're just gonna look at the titles, they all are very much interconnected to every single theme of the paper. For example, differences in parenting styles across cultures. So this explains why she used Hispanic. Distinctions in native Hispanic countries. And then she says, however, there are still differences inside the Hispanic countries. And then she says, imposter syndrome and academic achievement. This is another perspective that she has to highlight. And then she says, imposter syndrome in Hispanics, first generation students. So I hope you can see the connection she's trying to make. Or actually he, I don't know if this student is a boy or a girl, but nevertheless, yeah. So let's move to the methodology. And again, up until here, when it comes to the introduction and the literature review, everything should look similar to everything that we have done in AP Seminar. In AP Seminar, we have found a research question, and then we have found sources that deal with this research question, and we have established communication between sources, right? And of course, we have cited all of the sources according to the appropriate style. So until this point, everything looks like seminar. The only difference is the gap. And now, with the gap comes the methodology. Again, remember, a gap is something that I should fill. It's something that I should complete. So in order to complete it, I would need data type. How would I acquire this data? I would need to acquire it by employing a certain strategy or a certain way. A methodology is a way. So for example, if I would like to cook pasta, there is a certain way. So there is a certain methodology. So there is a certain method in order to cook the pasta that I would like to eat. So it's the same thing, okay? Now, I don't have pasta, so I don't have the new understanding. So there is a gap. Okay, what do? I employ a method. The method here is the way that I'm gonna cook the pasta. And at the end, what should I receive? I should find the pasta. If I cooked, but I ended up doing مجبوس دياي, it means that my method is wrong because initially I wanted pasta. I didn't want مجبوس دياي. Makes sense? So the method has to lead me to find the results that would answer, that will fill the gap first of all and eventually answer my initial research question. Okay, an overview. This study explores the impact of parenting styles. This is a repetition of what he or she said at the beginning. But we have something important here, which is the goal. The primary goal is to explore a minimally researched group that deals with unique situations than other groups that were previously studied. Which means here, this unique group, she means the Hispanic. This is important. Why is it important? Because it would provide insight on what kind of parenting style leads children to their best academically, and it would help see if there is a link between parenting style and experiencing imposter syndrome. Now, this shows that this research paper is important. This research that I'm doing will actually change something in the world. Okay? I'm not just doing a research because I would like to get a high grade. No, I'm not doing a research because I want to pass the course. No. Okay? Right. Steps taken in research process, and a key part in the method is to explain the steps that are done. Okay? As you can see, it says that she's doing a quantitative approach, meaning numerative. Quantitative, يعني numbers. Okay? So as you can see, she says that the method is of, or the data collection is of 5 steps. Okay, so she says, first I acknowledged the fact that I would have to determine what specific parenting style each parent adopted. So that's the first step. And took inspiration from a study by Betul and Lewis. Now remember, and this is very important, this research paper is called the core research. What is a core research? A core research is the basic research paper that I look into in order to create something similar to it. So it is the basis of my research. Why do we do that? Because we always need a good model to look to. So why am I explaining this, and why am I saying that this is important? If you would like to find a topic, don't just go and search for a topic online or about anything. No, you have to find a research paper that is really interesting to you about a topic that you like. And then you have to search if this research paper has already been explored, or this research topic has already been explored in Kuwait. If not, then that's perfect. You can do the same research paper with the same method and apply it in Kuwait. Makes sense? I hope it does. We're going again to go deeply into that when we come back to class, but this is just an overview or the main points, okay? Okay, and she says, and created a survey for the HIP that participated in my project. So it is a survey only for the HIP. So this is the sample. What kind of sample it is, we're going to discuss that later in class. But she did not just give the survey to everyone, right? Because if everyone is going to answer the survey, the research paper would not make sense, because she intends to only look at Hispanic group. Second, I took inspiration from the study conducted by, again, another study. So she combined two studies in this case and created a survey to analyze whether or not the first generation adolescents who participated in my study has experienced or do currently experience imposter syndrome symptoms. Now, why is this? Because remember that this research paper, from the title, it was doing two things. It was testing the relation between first generation Hispanic children and academic, or the parenting style, and the first generation of Hispanic children's academic achievement. This is on the first hand, and on the second hand, it is a correlation between this and imposter syndrome symptoms. And then she says, I then contacted first generation students and asked them if they were interested in participating in the study, while giving them a packet that included a requirement form and an informed consent. We're going to also discuss those when we come back to class. That outlined the important components of the study. I also gave students another packet that was made for their HIP, which I translated to Spanish in an attempt to eliminate any language barriers. And this was done by previous AP research students from our school, where they translated the surveys to Arabic in order to eliminate language barriers. Once okay, we're not gonna go into details. Let's continue. Okay, so as you can see here, she explains the participants and the setting, and then she explains the results. Yeah, actually she explains the main parts of the research or the method, and then data collection, and then the results. So how she collected data, and then all of this is the results. You have to just look at something, that we do not only have a verbal explanation of the results, but we also have visual explanation, which deals with tables, graphs, and so on, because these are easily analyzed. So as you can see, this is another way. Okay, we'll not go into details. So she's explaining the results and what does each result mean, because remember, the reader is not the one who should make the conclusions out of it. Again, results, a lot of results. Okay, and then yeah, so this part, this ends the results section. The results is all of the new data that has been collected. In the discussion part, we go into analyzing what each of those, or what those results show me as a conclusion. Okay, so what do they mean? So as you can see, she or he summarized the results in these two tables, and then she says, the findings of my study conclude that the same can be said for the HIP, whatever, in regards to Western identified parenting styles, their effect on education. This is considered to be a conclusion of the paper. So this is an answer to the research question that she put at the beginning. For example, and then she supports it by explaining. Why does this make sense? Okay. Again, in terms of establishing a relationship between parenting styles and adolescent chances of experiencing imposter syndrome, which is again the second part of the research question, there was found to be no link. And then she explains that. So these are actually the answers to the research question. Okay? Now, it is important to know something. Conducting a research does not mean that you need to impose that there is a relationship. No, it is a research question. It might be true, it might be wrong. You might reach the results anticipated at the beginning or not. It does not really matter, okay? After that, with the end of, so again, the student here, and this is important by the way, this is only found in high scoring samples where the student shows a relationship between the results of her study or his study and a relationship between them and the previous studies in the field. Remember what I told you about the puzzle? So now this is the piece of puzzle that was my gap. By answering this gap, I have filled the puzzle. The puzzle is now almost complete. Now I do have gaps here, gap here, gap here, or gap here, or here, but these are going to be discussed in other research papers, not in mine, okay? Because I'm not concerned with the other part, I'm only concerned with my part. So what the student did here is that after finding the new understanding which fills the gap, she connects it to the body of knowledge or to the other pieces of the puzzle that already exist. And at the end, she ends with the implications. Why would those results of the study help? So she says, would allow Hispanic immigrant parents and their first generation students to see to what extent the parenting style, whatever, and she explains how those people can use her research paper. Next, she finishes with limitations. What limited her research? Why? So for example, she says, this study consisted of 11 parents and 11 students, which is an extremely small representation of the amount of Hispanic population. So she says that lived in the United States. So this is a small sample. So maybe it does not really represent the huge population, the big population. And she explains that, and she explains other limitations of the research. Why, limitations are things that do not make the research a perfect research, okay? And then at the end, the future research. Remember when I told you about the other gaps that are here? This is when it comes to the other research, the future directions. What should other researchers do? What should they research, okay? Yeah. And then at the end, this is the references page. As we can see, this is a good bulk, as you can see, of references. And if we look at them, we would find that most of them, if not all, are scholarly papers, which is good. Last but not least are the appendices. Appendices are parts of the paper that are put at the end of the paper as references to the readers. They are not put in between parts of the paper because we don't want to, we don't want to disrupt the communication of the paper. We don't want to make it messy, okay? So these are the statements that were provided in the survey. These are the questions in the other survey. Sorry. And that's it. So the score here is 4. This is still considered as high, okay? Now, we're not gonna comment on why did it score 4, but we're gonna see that later on, okay? Okay, let's just stop over here. This paper did not earn a score of 5 because the implications to the community contain hyperbolic language. What does this mean? Hyperbolic language is, for example, you do a research, you find out in your research that most people are boycotting McDonald's, for example, okay? And then you say, this shows that Kuwaitis are boycotting McDonald's, or that boycotting is a good strategy, or it is an effective strategy, or that it is a publicly accepted strategy, okay? Now, will this work? No, because I'm using hyperbolic language. I am exaggerating, Okay, this is not the reality. Not every person, you did not interview every person in Kuwait. You did not distribute the survey to every person in Kuwait. So you should also always make sure that you are not using hyperbolic language. So it says, the finding of my study concluded the same can be said for HIP and their first generation in regards to Western whatever. So she linked two variables just like that. Furthermore, the paper did not earn a score of 5 because the limited discussion of the data presented does not connect back to the community of practice, an integral component for score 5. So in order to get a score to a full grade, you have to always connect it to the every now and then with the results, you have to connect it back to the previous research papers and so on. Okay, we're gonna see that again later on. We're gonna discuss that in details. For now, this is the end of this research paper. This research paper actually explains the effect of X on Y. Okay, this is called, what are we doing here? We are explaining a what, sorry, I don't know what's wrong. We are explaining a relationship. Okay, you have to keep that in mind because I am explaining a relationship between X and Y, whatever those X and Y are. Okay, now in AP research, you can write a research paper that explains. You can write a research paper that explores. Explore means when you investigate. مثلا, what are the factors that influence students' movie choices? This was a topic that was already done by one of the boys and who scored 4 in AP research in our school. Okay, so yeah, what are the factors that influence the choice of teenagers' movie choices or something? So in this case, I'm not looking at a relationship between X and Y. No, I am looking at verbal, or let's say qualitative data, meaning factors that influence. Meaning, for example, it can be the genre of the movie, it can be the marketing strategies used in the movie, it can be the actors and actresses who participated in these movies, the location of airing this movie. So there are a couple or a set of causes. In this case, I'm not explaining X and Y, but I am exploring factors. So number 1, it is explain. Number 2, it is explore. And the third one is create. Create is when you create something that is new. For example, you create an art piece, you create a movie, you create a song, you create a recipe, you create anything, okay? And then you explain the steps that you have taken in order to create this thing. This 2 create papers are the highest scored papers because they are, not all of the students do it. So I do encourage all of you to think about something to create. Okay, so think about something to create and do your research about that thing that you're going to create. In the next video, I'm also going to explain another sample which shows a create paper. So yeah, so you'll have like 2 types of papers explained to you. For now, we're gonna see other samples, of course, when we get back to class. Thank you. I know that this is a long video. Thank you very much.